Good evening, everybody. I'm going to give it a little bit of time here for people to start coming into the room, and then I'll jump into my introduction of One Health, which probably many of you have heard multiple times. But
If
maybe I'll
you
change it this time, so you ought to hold on until you to hear what I'm going to say. And by
if
the
you
way, I have a little bug that's flying in front of my face right now, so if I'm going like this all the time, there's a good reason for it. All right. Well, I'm going to get started here. Hopefully, we'll have more people joining us here as we come along. So, One Health. What is One Health? Well, One Health at Del Val. Um, well, we've got a definition at the bottom of this slide. One Health is a transdisciplinary systems approach that works locally, regionally, nationally, and globally to attain optimal well being of people and society, the environment, and plants and animals. Together, the three major components make up the One Health triad, and the well being of each is inextricably linked to the others in the triad. I can simplify that a bit. That logo there is of the world. We've got one planet. We're all residents on this planet, whether we're elements of the environment or plants and animals or us in society. And we have the ability to understand that connectivity and that our actions have implications not only for other people, but for these other elements of the triad. And it's my contention that we have responsibilities. We have responsibilities to recognize those connections and to make decisions both in our personal life and in our professional lives and within our societal lives to pay attention to those connections and try to help with the well being of all other elements of the planet. If things go wrong for the other elements, they're definitely going to go wrong for us as well. Well, we've seen that. We're seeing loss of biodiversity. We've got global climate change. We have a number of horrors that face the world that are primarily of our own making. And the impacts are not maybe the worst on us, but that they may be for the environment and for others. So 10 years ago, actually now working on 11 years ago, we started One Health at Del Val. And that incorporates about a third of the faculty across the campus and working together across different disciplines to try to introduce this concept to all of our students at Del Val, not just those that are in either health fields or in veterinary fields or in environmental fields, but everyone, because everyone is involved here. And so we do this through partially through education. We have Del Val 2, a first year experience course, and every student is introduced to One Health at that point, at least in brief component, and asked during their first year to at least attend some One Health seminars. And then other courses like mine absolutely beat you to death with the One Health concept on a daily basis. As hopefully all of my students would say, if you say, what is One Health about? It's about everything. And that you can incorporate it into everything. It is not just interdisciplinary, but transdisciplinary. And I think the benefit to that is for you guys when you're going out into the real world, having the ability to listen to others, to take advantage of the expertise of others, are going to make you better at your job. Being able to listen to people is going to make you better at life, better global citizens. The other component of this is research. And I got to say, we haven't really got very far with that. Students at Del Val do student research, really student led research. And if you want to warm my little heart, one of the best ways to do that is students from different departments to come together and propose a research project that is truly a One Health project, uh, garnering experiences from two or more majors. And then finally, outreach. I don't feel we can get the message of One Health out if we don't actually present it to everyone. So these One Health seminars are not only for all students and faculty and staff at Del Val, but also for our community. We have a number of community members that hear about our seminars each time that we have one. We do 6 of these at least a semester. We're doing 7 actually this semester. And this is a way of kind of spreading the message. And if you look at the list of seminars that we've had, they cover a lot of different topics. And so our topic tonight and our speaker this evening is somebody incredibly special, special to me in particular, and I'll get to that. But right now, I'm going to go into more formal biography of this individual. Dr. Richard Nisbett earned a joint doctorate in biocultural anthropology and community ecology and a master's of public health in infectious disease epidemiology. He worked in eco-health and disease ecology at the interface of ecology, biodiversity, conservation, and community health in the tropical forests of Africa, kind of where we hooked up, the Circum-Caribbean and Southeast Asia, retired to the coastal Alabama, Mississippi global biodiversity hotspot. That is not his backyard, by the way. That's just a picture. He is a citizen science volunteer on ecological restoration, native plant phenology, and climate change and watershed monitoring projects. He has certificates in earth law practice, coastal restoration, key biodiversity areas, and water quality monitoring. I'm going to pattern my retirement after Richard and try to actually make something useful of my being. I have said this to my classes, but I'm going to say it publicly. This is Dr. Richard Nisbett. He is my best friend. I have got to say that some of the best elements of my career have been because of our relationship with each other. We've been working together now 30 years, 30 years, and first met doing work in Liberia. And I'm now going to give him a chance to actually do his presentation. You're not sharing at the moment, Richard, but
Okay.
we'll go
Well,
from there.
Reg, thank you for that introduction. So, in my culture, now I have to say something nice about you, but I can do that. I can do that. First, I just want to say it's an honor for me to be in this webinar series, you guys. I have so much respect for this program and how it's been carried out. And I'll tell you why it's an honor really in my second slide. The other thing I want to say is I thank everybody for taking time to be here. I know how busy your lives are and all the demands that you have. So for whatever reasons you're here, I really appreciate it. And I hope that we can all kind of learn something together during this session. So let me see if I can make this presentation come up. It's always a challenge. One challenge is my computer. Uh, you guys, I spent basically 25 years. Is that up there, Reg?
Not yet.
Okay.
Oh, it looks,
Is
yeah,
it
there you
now?
go. So you can get into your presentation mode and full screen and you'll be good.
Okay, let me just move one screen here. Uh, it won't let me. You guys, I spent 25 years on Microsoft, and I got so fed up with Microsoft, I bought about a year ago this Mac, and I love this MacBook Air, but I thought it would be like teaching an old dog new tricks. It's not. It's like teaching an old dog how to be a cat. And it's really been a struggle for me to get the learning curve on how to use this machine. It's a beautiful machine. But now, let me see if
If
I
you,
can
yeah, if you go to slideshow and
start the
then go to,
slideshow.
there you go.
The problem
There.
I've got is all these tiles are covering up my commands. Anyway, I
That's
appreciate that.
looking good.
I appreciate that introduction and want to say a little bit more about Reg on my second slide. Well, I'm starting with the Anthropocene, and I can't tell you how much I hate that word and how I fought it for so many years, but I decided it really is technically accurate. it's caught the imagination of so many people, and it's a very fitting way to describe what's going on. You know, those of us that are living through this sixth mass extinction is really unique in Earth history, and it needs probably an appropriate era to designate it. So I've made my peace with Anthropocene, but tonight what I want to talk about is moving beyond that. And we've got the possibility to do that because of a lot of global movements that are trying to change the consciousness of humans. One of them is One Health, isn't it? That's a transformational field. You're looking at the way things are and saying, wait a minute, it's not just human health or animal health. We've got wildlife animals, and we've got domestic animals and human animals, and they're sharing germs and genes, aren't they? I mean, there's so much going on when you take an ecological perspective, and it's something still that not very many people do, especially as you interact with the biomedical field. So that's a transformational movement. Another transformational movement is called Ecocive, which is just short, obviously, for ecological civilization. It basically comes out of Yale. It's been going on for a couple of decades. It's primarily going on in China, where they're taking Buddhist concepts from their center of environment and religion and trying to reconceptualize what ecology means in an urban setting. So how can you design an urban development, a city, on ecological principles that's ecologically sound and that's sustainable? So as far as I know, the only place it's being implemented is China, but I have a very dear childhood friend. We've been close friends since the third grade, and he's a Chinese scholar, and he takes his students to China every summer. And he has worked on several of these Ecocive implementations. So it's a really sort of interesting transformational approach. They'll tell you right in their literature, we're trying to transform human consciousness, to think in a different way, to have a shift, to think in a different way about how humans are part of the environment. And then the other transformational movement that I'll talk about tonight is Earth Law. And it's really very similar to those others with regard to what our ultimate goals really are. So here's slide number 2. This is where I get to say something nice about Reg. This is a trip about 30 years ago. It was the first time I met Reg Hoyt. We were going down to rural Liberia to visit a very important national park. The war had been going on for 7 years, so this was kind of a lull in the fighting. And you see us on this Russian helicopter that dropped us off down in the southeast. We wanted to go see what damage had been done to the park. We wanted to try to gather our former park staff and see how they were doing, and try to get current information about the threats to the park and the people who had staffed it. And if you look at the photo of the team there, that's mostly the team. The gentlemen in uniform are the Nigerian peacekeeping force that went down with us, and that vehicle flew down with us too. It rolled off of that Russian helicopter, and we used it for assessing what was going on in a lot of the communities in the area, and what was going on with the park itself. It was being timbered by the warlords because they would take the timber out and trade it for munitions and armaments. So we were really concerned about what was going on in this national park. So this is the beginning, the way I see it.
Oop, Richard has frozen.
Action.
Oh,
What?
you froze. You froze for a little bit there, Richard.
Am I going again now? Okay. I got the message. Your internet connection is unstable. Well, we know that now. Basically, this was the beginning of a lot of Reg's work in the southeast with communities and hunters, looking at bushmeat, looking at human and animal interaction. And it really led to some of the predecessors of One Health. We gave conference presentations in Ireland in 2005, 2006, which were the first two COHAB meetings. COHAB was the Conference on Health and Biodiversity. It was kind of a predecessor to One Health. And we gave presentations there and developed even more of these conversations about community health and transmission of diseases, in particular across these boundaries between host animals and humans. And the second kind of important thing about this slide is that I found out that the conventional wisdom that at the end of your life your best friends are always your childhood friends is not always true. It's true a lot of the time, but Reg Hoyt has become one of my best friends, and it's been a joy and delight to work with him. I am blown away by the vision he's had to take One Health and put it into an educational environment, to introduce curriculum, to introduce One Health across the curriculum, and to run these seminars for as long as he has. It's truly unique in higher education, in my estimation, and he probably deserves a round of applause if people want to give it to him in their in the privacy of wherever they are. So I appreciate this opportunity to be with you guys tonight, and talk a little bit about Earth law.
Thank you, Richard.
The other thing I want to do then is get the acknowledgments and thank you out of the way for Earth Law Center. I feel like I've been doing this work for 30 years because I'm an anthropologist, and we deal with a lot of these issues when you work with native populations around the world, whether it's in the U.S. or outside the U.S. But the Earth Law Center is a really innovative, visionary program. And they teach a course every summer called Earth Law Practice, so you can get a certificate in Earth Law. That book on the right side there, that photo of the book, is their course textbook. It's like 600 pages long. This is the newest version that was released just in the last month or two, so it's current as of December 2025. Everything that you can imagine about Earth Law around the world is in this book. Now, most of us can't afford it, so you need to have an institution like a library or an organization that can buy that book for you and get access to it. On the other side, where the photos are, that's the headquarters staff of the Earth Law Center. Their headquarters are in Durango, Colorado, but they're standing in a river in Colombia. So this is the Atrada River, and they were there to celebrate and commemorate the legal legislation that created legal rights for that river within Colombia. And the bottom picture is brand new. That was just last month. They did a launch of their London office. So they've opened an office now in London to handle Europe and Africa. So it's really a growing organization. Having gone through the course, they've given us the right to use all of the slides and things that were used during the presentations. Just a phenomenal series of presentations from people all over the world talking about what they were doing, what their ethnicity brought to the table, and film documentaries of how they were trying to create Earth Law wherever they were around the world. Very powerful experience. So we're going to jump right into that. What is Earth Law? This just happened in January of this year too, 2026. So the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians passed a resolution that gave legal rights to Long Person. Long Person is a relative in their culture. It's actually a series of interlaced waterways and watersheds that go from the Smoky Mountains, 790 miles down to the sea. But they consider it a person in their culture. They have reciprocal obligations with that watershed, I would prefer to call it. And they believe that it has healing properties. So if they care for it and help it heal whenever it is disturbed, then the river will heal a variety of physical ailments, sort of like holy water in other cultures, or maybe the Ganges in India. So it's a really kind of important event because we don't have this happening as much in the U.S. as we do globally. But the cool thing about those photos there that you recognize, all of these are young women, and that's the movement globally. It's young women, it's young people, it's indigenous people who are really pressing the envelope on Earth Law globally. So it's a very important perspective on relationship to nature, relationship to one another. So just kind of a caveat here. This is a new book by Robert McFarlane. Called Is a River Alive? And I was on a webinar about a month ago, and somebody said they were on the book launch for this webinar for this book, and the author said that when his young child read the title, he said, "Well, Dad, that's a stupid title." And the author said, "Why?" He said, "Well, everybody knows a river's alive. That's just stupid to name the book that." But I think that sometimes we forget that there's a lot of knowledge out there that children have in a different view of the world. There's a lot of knowledge that other cultures have that really should cause us to reflect a little bit on some of the concepts that we have, even in a field like One Health and ecological science. So the law is a philosophical inquiry. It's about justice and legal rights. Who has those? Who gets those? How do we adjudicate the rights between two parties who have equal or unequal rights? So the law is a very philosophical endeavor, and it reflects what our cultures tell us, what our values should be, and how we should look, the perspectives that we look out upon the world, our cosmologies. How are we related to the natural world? So this is another one of Grant's slide. Grant is the visionary leader and founder of the Earth Law Center. He's an environmental lawyer, but also an earth lawyer. And so if we look at water law, my first career was spent in politics in the state of Texas, at the state level, working in the House of Representatives and the Senate, and my specialty was water law. So I can tell you that there's just a heck of a lot of law out there that has to do with water and who has a right to it, and what rights do your downstream property owners have, and it's a very complex system of law, but it is a legal fiction. And especially when you start assigning rights to legal fictions, you raise some really interesting questions philosophically. And if you look at what Grant has put together on this slide with regard to the cultural reality of a river, it can be a living being, a sacred entity, a kin or relative. It can be a spirit or a deity. It can be an ancestor. So globally, when you start talking about what is a river, it's very different than what our anthropocentric law says it is. Anthropocentric just means that it's human-centered, that humans are the reason we have this law so that we can protect human rights or property rights or some other aspect of humans. But ecocentric law is different. It says, wait a minute, what if we think in terms that Native Americans or Native indigenous people around the world think with regard to their relationships to parts of the environment, in this case, a river. So what they try to do in Earth law is to align those views with environmental law. And so you talk about all of these different areas that you could be working in with regard to Earth law, the rights of rivers, biocultural rights, legal guardianship, all the way down to bioregional law that I'll just touch on very briefly at the end. So it's very philosophical, and it's getting at how do we produce laws and how do we produce value systems that reflect what those what local customs, values, norms are for local people, not just our view from Western science. So here's some attributes or principles of One Health, and Reg has already gone through a lot of this material. I was amazed at how many federal agencies, especially in the Department of the Interior, have some statement on their websites about One Health. It's really cool. I couldn't believe that everybody has really elevated it to that level of their website, that I can find it without too much effort. But this is from the Department of the Interior, and if you just look at the words that I've underlined as opposed to kind of reading the text here, all of those words are really kind of important. Collaborative, transdisciplinary, interconnection or intersectoral, complex health issues that you're dealing with, threats to ecosystems. That one is a little curious to me. I hope to learn tonight how One Health deals with threats to ecosystems, because I'm not familiar with that. But it focuses on intersectoral communication, manages shared challenges, and builds for sustainable solutions. Well, the interesting thing from an Earth law perspective about that statement is that's exactly what we're talking about. We're using the same language, and we've got the same definitions for those terms. So it shows you a very similar orientation in these two transformative movements with regard to One Health and Earth law. So what is Earth law then? Earth law is a lot of different areas, and I can only cover very few of them tonight. So I say here it's a constellation of global legal movements. The main thing that you're trying to do is focus on nature as being the center of those rights. You're trying to protect the environment by giving nature a stake as a legal person in the law. And you're also trying to raise or shift human consciousness. So very similar to really what you're doing in these other movements that I talked about earlier, these transformative movements. So one of the core questions for Earth Law is if corporations, the corporations that are big timber companies or extractive mining companies, if they're a legal person under the law and they have rights as persons, why doesn't nature have rights as a person? It does in the cultures of a great many people. The majority of people on the planet recognize the rights of nature in their indigenous communities, their indigenous law. Earth Law calls that indigenous legalities. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And again, just the fact that it's being led from the global south, it's indigenous people, primarily female and wildlife rights activists. And the important thing to grasp about Earth Law is, number one, it is ecocentric, so it's Earth-centered, as opposed to anthropocentric law, but also that they're trying to foster legal pluralism. Okay, so the U.S. is a plural society, isn't it? You can, if you talk in terms of religion, you can have all sorts. You can have all sorts of religious beliefs and religious institutions in this society, and even within a family. I have close friends who have one member of the partnership is of one faith, and another member is of a totally different faith, and we call that religious pluralism. Well, what Earth Law would work towards is legal pluralism, so that we could combine, we could complement one another, the Earth Law and the ecocentric law, in order to better protect what's going on in the environment. We'll talk just a little bit more about this. These five that I've listed here are the key movements within Earth Law. The rights of nature, the rights of future generations, pretty much the same thing. Rights of rivers, watersheds, other features. Those could be sacred features in the landscape. In Colorado, Victory Mountain was just designated a legal person. It's the first mountain that I'm aware of in the U.S. That has legal status. Rights of animals, and then nature as a board member or legal guardianship. So there's a great toolbox that the Earth Law Center has put together on how to put nature on your board. Maybe at Del Val you would want to say, as a student initiative, we would like to see nature to be on our board of trustees. Believe me, it won't be easy, but you can approach these things of talking about nature and the biodiversity on this campus should be considered in every decision we make. And so you're seeing a huge movement in putting nature on boards of corporations. Corporations actually appreciate Earth Law and ecocide law because it levels the playing field for them. They don't have to pay as many bribes or extortion when you're trying to compete for contracts out there. They would prefer that there be certain protections for the corporation to be able to work more efficiently, globally especially. So nature as a board member, legal guardianship, I'll talk a little bit more about, and then ecocide. Ecocide is a really fascinating area of Earth Law that really has caught the public's imagination in a way that a lot of the rest of this really hasn't. So just very briefly on this slide, there's several different dimensions that you can work at. If you work at the biosphere as a whole, nature, that's the first dimension, and you can put that into your laws if you want to. It's hard, but you can do that. The next dimension is really ecosystems like Long Person, the interlaced water system, or an entire species, or other aggregates or collectives is kind of the second dimension of Earth Law. And the third is individualistic, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's individual animals, which is kind of a growing area within Earth Law globally. Now, this is a very complex slide, but I'm going to reduce it down to just two important things. If you look at the column that says status quo, you have all these different types of laws that are practiced in any society that has complex layered law. You've got environmental law, constitutional law, animal law, all the way down to property law and criminal law. So if you got a law degree, you would probably practice in one of those specialties, and you would become an expert at that type of law. Under Earth Law, you really have the same specialties, but you're going at it a little bit differently. One of the things that you would do in Earth Law is you take the status quo law and say, can we just expand it? Can we include nature in property rights? Can we include animals in human rights or animal law? can we just expand the definition a little bit and cover more categories specifically as related to nature? And then sometimes it starts brand new, de novo. It's a brand new type of law. And ecocide is kind of a new type of law. So the main thing is there are all these specialties that you can practice in, and you need to use those in earth law to be able to advocate for the rights of nature. The other concept that's important from this slide is legal standing. If you don't have legal standing, you can't bring a case. It will never go to trial. You can't possibly find out who wins or loses. If I want to sue Professor Hoyt for giving me a bad grade in a course because I thought that he discriminated against me, I can't take that to court unless I have legal standing. And so part of earth law, at least in the early years, was try to develop case law related to legal standing. Does nature have standing before the law? Can it actually sue? Can it actually be implemented as a policy or as an enforcement action? The second thing is the rights of future generations. Do future generations have legal standing? Generally speaking, in our law system in the United States, there's very little that addresses unborn beings. They just don't have rights. Until you're actually alive and a human being, there are no accrued rights to you or justice for you. The one exception is abortion law. There are many people in the anti-abortion movement who would like to extend human rights to an unborn child or a fetus. And that's the one exception I can think of that actually even addresses future generations. But if you took a lot of these concepts from indigenous people, like the seventh generation principle, the seventh generation principle is the fact that when you make decisions in an indigenous society, you're thinking 7 generations down the road. So that's 140 years. So we need to be mindful of what's coming after us, okay? And there's been some really interesting movement on legal standing for the rights of future generations. In the United States, the young people of Montana sued the state and said that they had been damaged by climate change and other environmental degradation. And it was not only endangering their future and their livelihoods, but it's endangering their future offspring. And that court was adjudicated successfully. It went all the way to the Montana Supreme Court, and by a decision of 6-1, it was ruled that young people and their unborn offspring, future children, have legal standing under the law. Now, it will be adjudicated forever, and we are a litigious society, so there'll be continual litigation on this. But it's very interesting of how you've got to get some of these things into case law before you can really start writing and using law as it relates to earth law. This other slide is another complex one, but I'll be really brief with it. There are many areas of law that are already out there. The right to a healthy environment, a lot of these are international treaties. The rights of indigenous people, that's an international treaty. Customary law, which is just local traditional law within a country. International environmental law and the precautionary approach. All of these are bodies of law that you can draw upon if you wanted to put nature in your constitution or wanted to put it into your statutory laws. Customary law is one of the more interesting ones, where Reg and I worked in Liberia. Customary law is recognized under the Constitution of the Liberian government. The Constitution was written at Harvard and modeled after the U.S. Constitution, but of course ours has nothing in there about customary law. Customary law are just the local traditions and rules that local people use to self-govern. So when I was there on some of the projects we were doing, I was trying to document land tenure rights and usufruct rights. Land tenure right is that since all the land belongs to the community, not to an individual, there's no property law there. Then what happens when someone dies? Does that property go back to the community? Does it go to the heirs of the individual? So there's a complex area of traditional rules that rural communities work by, and that's recognized under the law, the Constitution in this case of the country of Liberia. There's another thing that was interesting that we discovered there, and when we flew in that helicopter, we went to see a lot of our friends in one ethnic group that's called the Sapo. The Sapo are one of about 13 to 16 ethnic groups within Liberia, but we had worked very closely with Sapo because they lived in the areas surrounding this national park. And within the Sapo, most indigenous societies have an ethnicity or a tribal affiliation, and then they have a clan system. So within the Sapo, there's a clan called the Weja. And the Weja told us that that chimpanzees are their ancestors, and chimpanzees taught them how to survive in the forest. So it's taboo for them to kill a chimpanzee or to eat the meat of a chimpanzee. So there would be a foundational principle that you could take to the national level if you wanted to. I'm not sure it would be a good thing to do. There's 16 other ethnicities in Liberia, and I don't know what they would think about that. But when you're building constitutional law or federal statutory law, you can take these other laws that are out there to bring cases, to get legal standing, to create laws, new laws under an earth law sort of system. Well, this slide I can explain it fairly quickly too. It's a complicated slide, but if you look on the left, in the past 20 years, there's been 495 initiatives in over 40 countries with regard to rights of nature. There's 35 on this slide. I think it's actually up to 40 rivers now that have been granted legal personhood. And you have law that happens at all these different levels, the constitutional level, the national statutory level, the state statutory level in this country. And you've got judicial law, and you've got municipal law, you've got county law. There's all these different levels that you can work at. So if you look at that curve at the very bottom, it's really looking at what type of law is prevalent in rights of nature legislation. And you look at how the curve really starts going up in 2006. But even now, that dark brown color is case law. So a lot of the work has been done is trying to create case law to show legal standing that you can create other law, or that individuals, future generations can have a stake under the law. What's grown there is that kind of light green area, which is local law. It's grown tremendously in rights of nature legislation. So a lot of the work that's being done is on the local level. If you look at that top slide up there, it's really the types of environment or the types of nature that are being covered under these laws. And again, in the very beginning, it was mostly nature as a broad field. The biosphere has earth law rights. And now it's starting to change a little bit, and it's more fresh water. So a lot of work has been going on with rivers and creating rivers as legal persons under earth law. The interesting thing in the red at the very below, you see this curve really starts to accelerate in 2006. The first city ever that we can find in the world that had a rights of nature resolution passed by the city government was Tamaqua, Pennsylvania in 2006. At 2010, Pittsburgh had passed a rights of nature resolution by their city council. And even though not all the dams that have come down from rivers in Pennsylvania are related to earth law, Pennsylvania leads the nation in the number of dams that have been removed, 14 dams. And that's a huge part of water law and rivers as legal persons is the right to flow freely. So you'll see that in the specific rights that rivers are granted under these laws. So this is just a slide that shows you that on the lower left, if you look down at the x-axis and the y-axis, you're talking about how hard is it to get these things passed. Well, believe me, working in the coastal South, we can't even have these conversations. So it's pretty difficult in the best of circumstances. But the easiest law to get passed is a resolution or a declaration. It doesn't have any enforcement. It has no teeth. It just says, hey, we think it's a good idea. So that rights of nature legislation that was passed by Tamaqua, Pennsylvania in 2006, that just says, hey, we think there ought to be a cultural value for rights of nature within our community. There's no enforcement to it. There are no laws. There are no consequences to that. But it's kind of the first step that you take. If you look all the way up to the upper right, the strongest law you can pass is a constitutional law. The only country in the world that has put nature in its constitution is Ecuador. but there are a lot of other countries in South America that are very close to getting nature at the constitutional level. That's very hard to do politically, and it takes a great deal of effort. So in a way, when we talk about these local laws, these local ordinances, these resolutions, they're about awareness essentially. Whereas the further you go up that line towards constitutional law or national statutes, there's enforcement mechanisms there. Somebody can be punished, fined, sued under those laws. The more strict that they become as you move up the degree of difficulty. So here's just a chart that the top half of it shows some rivers or freshwater habitats that have been named with the rights of nature. The lower part of it talks about countries, but you're just showing across here the types of rights that are in this legislation: the right to life, to exist, the right to protection, the right to regeneration, the right to restoration, the fact that citizens can file lawsuits. Those are things that you would love to see in these laws. And the last one is guardianship. So I just want to mention the right to restoration, because nearly all of the river legislation that's out there, and a great much of the other legislation, even at a countrywide level, is giving habitats and ecosystems the right to be restored to the way they were before the damage was done. That's really interesting, and it creates a whole new level of science within ecological science and zoology and biology. And I would say that there are two world leaders in this, but the primary world leader in my area is the universities here along the coastal South, because we got millions of dollars from the BP disaster, and it's all gone into ecological restoration. The fact about guardianship is just the fact that somebody's got to have the power to enforce, and somebody's got to have the power to decide if rights have been violated of these different systems. And so guardianship or some sort of government structure has to be in these resolutions. So now let's go back to long person's legal rights. So I'll just go through this very quickly. The Cherokee Band, the Eastern Band of the Cherokee, granted legal rights to exist, persist, and regenerate without human disturbance. The right to maintain and restore a natural state without undue human disturbance. The right to serve as a home and habitat for its non-human relatives, consistent with ecological relationships. The right to access and maintain free-flowing conditions, including protection from damming, obstruction, or any alteration that impedes the natural flow of water. And then, of course, they organized all those rights under the protectorate of the Eastern Band. So these are the guardians, the legal guardians. So your parents may be your legal guardians till you reach a certain age. There's a mechanism within all law that's called guardian ad litem, which just means that you can have someone designated as your legal guardian, and they can make decisions over finances and over a variety of other matters pertaining to your life. But we're just using that concept to be built into these Earth law resolutions and legislation. I'm not going to talk about ocean law except to say there is just as much going on in ocean law. The Treaty of the High Seas was just signed in the last few weeks or so. You have these indigenous protected and conserved areas. Primarily, these are happening in seafaring nations, these small island nations of the Pacific in particular, that are creating all sorts of ocean laws and sanctuaries that are granted the rights of personhood for the oceans. Now, just a little bit on animals. Basically, if you look at our laws, they're very complex with regard to how we relate to animals, but generally, pests and vermin are not considered animals. They're not considered protected in any way under U.S. law. Test subjects are, so research labs that have animals in them, there are all sorts of protections for animals there. But they don't have rights. The animals don't have rights, but they have protections and human duties to be treated in a humane way. There's wildlife laws, there's invasive species. An invasive species is pretty much the same as a pest and vermin. I don't care if it's a coyote or a fox. You can exterminate it any way you want. Doesn't matter the pain and suffering that's caused. There's just no protection as invasive species under our current environmental law. Endangered species is kind of an interesting thing because it gets very close to saying that species has a right to exist. basically, I think it's saying that humans have a duty to protect that species from going extinct. But still, it's pretty close to a right of that species to exist, and that would be on that second dimension of Earth law that we talked a little bit about. But then, if you think about how humans consider animals and how indigenous cultures around the world, again, the majority of the people on the planet don't think like we do with regard to animals. So they're considered maybe sacred entities or kin or sentient beings or ancestors, or the bottom line says living beings, but they really meant superior beings there. So maybe they're gods within that culture. So again, trying to take ecocentric concepts and apply it and use it in anthropocentric law to change the law to the extent that animals get some additional protections. So here's just some examples of some rights that have been granted. Orcas, I think that's still in litigation, but orcas off the Washington coast and the Lummi people are trying to get them designated as their spiritual ancestors and protect them under that. In Asia, the country of India has decided that the entire animal kingdom has rights, which is kind of interesting because we don't give any rights to invertebrates, including an octopus under our law, which is a pretty sentient being and pretty intelligent, but they're not given any status under our animal laws, but in India they are. The elephant in Pakistan is an individual at the individual level, that dimension we talked about. In Latin America, some zoo animals have been given legal protection as persons, a chimpanzee in Argentina, a fox in Peru. In Panama, sea turtles are protected as a population. They have a legal right to do what sea turtles do. Stingless bees have now been approved. That's been in the last month or two as well. Stingless bees are a group of bees that are in a tight relationship with a local Peruvian culture, and they got them designated a legal person under the law in Peru. So a lot of this is going on in the developing world that have different kind of concepts to law than is traditional in a rich northern country. And then in Australia and Oceania, a lot of countries, especially these small seafaring nations, island nations, have granted personhood for whales and signed treaties for whales as individuals. They consider them ancestors that they're in a reciprocal relationship with. So I'm trying to go a little faster here so we can stay on track. Ecocide is a brand new area within Earth law. And let me just read the definition here from Jojo Mehta, which says, ecocide is unlawful or wanton acts committed with knowledge that there is a substantial likelihood of severe and either widespread or long-term damage to the environment caused by those acts. So the impetus here is to get this made as the sixth crime against humanity under the International Criminal Code. The court in The Hague, Netherlands, oversees those. There's 5 current crimes against humanity: genocide, enslavement, forced deportation, aggression means starting a war. So there's 5 acts right now that meet the standard of being a crime against humanity. And this movement is a global movement to get ecocide as a crime against humanity. It's really gaining traction, and it's captured the public imagination as well. The European Parliament has it under consideration now, and here are the countries that have kind of passed ecocide laws. Now, some of these are national laws. They're not talking about the criminal court here. They're talking about what goes on in these individual countries. And I think it's up to 37 countries now have passed legislation. So the ones at the bottom are the newest ones. So India passed a law that criminalized ecocide within the subcontinent of India. Ghana passed a law that criminalized ecocide within its boundaries. And Scotland, of course, is just one country within the United Kingdom, but they have their own parliament. And in February of this year, they finally passed a resolution for Scotland urging the UK Parliament to join the ecocide movement. This is Monica Lennon who led that legislation. I was the chair of an environmental group in Scotland and England with a few members in Germany and the Netherlands and Belgium. And we really worked with her and wrote letters and really tried to stir people up on this campaign to get Scotland to be the first country in Europe to actually pass an ecocide resolution. And as I said, it passed very recently. Well, here are the things that happened at the last meeting of the IUCN. The IUCN, is the premier group dealing with biodiversity and endangered and threatened species. They have their red list for those species. Professor Hoyt is a member of the pangolin specialist group, and I believe one other specialist group with IUCN. So they had their big confab last October, and there were these 6 motions that pertain to Earth law, and all of them passed as resolutions. So it's not law, but it shows you that the people who are the specialists in biodiversity have really bought into the fact that we need ecocentric Earth law to really protect the species that they're dealing with. So Number 54 was operationalizing the rights of nature. 55, recognition of the rights of Antarctica. 56, advancing an ethical human-ocean relationship. 61, recognizing the crime of ecocide. 67, living in harmony through ecocentric legislation. 70, integrating science and restoration with rights-based approaches. So there's a lot of traction going on here in these premier organizations. I have to mention this briefly because it's really, really important. I tried to delete this slide and I just couldn't. There's a movement today called bioregionalism. If you're in a lot of ecology classes, you may have heard of it. But basically, it's taking the concept of biogeographical realms, or what we would call biomes, so forest, desert, montane forest, estuary, taking these major ecological biomes and thinking of them more as a bioregional area. So they organize One Earth is the organization that organizes this into biogeographical regions, realms, and 185 bioregions, 844 ecoregions, which is kind of a goofy word for habitats, and they're not exactly the same, and there's a whole lot more habitats than that. But if you look at the graphic on the right-hand side, that's what we call the southeastern coastal plain. They call it the southeast riparian forest and savanna bioregion, and within that they recognize 64 ecoregions, so 64 habitat types. In Alabama, there are 7 bioregions, and the Alabama coastal plain is 5 terrestrial and about 5 marine ecoregions or habitats as well. The point is you see, and you know this from One Health, if you look at those state lines, they mean nothing, don't they? Especially to flying creatures or germs, pathogens, or mobile animals. They're moving across this. So bioregionalism says you've got to connect bioregionally and work with one another. We can't just pass these laws in one state, and if the other state doesn't pass it, it really does no good. So this is a huge global movement, and there's getting ready to be a ton of money, hundreds of millions of dollars, if not the better part of $1 trillion, going into bioregional approaches in Earth law and in preservation and protection of the environment. Okay, so how do these kind of come together? Well, everything that you talk about really in One Health is very compatible to what Earth law is really saying. You want optimal health outcomes that recognize interconnection. Well, Earth law is about the intersect of these ecosystems and humans and animals and plants within an area, especially within a bioregion. One Health addresses complex health issues and threats to ecosystems, and think about the rights of river systems, watersheds, habitats, and features like sacred landscapes. That's really a high-level approach to dealing with these complex issues. You're dealing specifically with health, but doesn't mean that Earth law isn't addressing health as well. Fosters intersectoral communication. Well, Earth law as a board member of an organization or a corporation, legal guardianship, co-governance, all of these concepts are fostering cooperation between different types of groups, different sectors within the economy. Cross-sectoral action to manage shared challenges and sustainability. Again, Earth law uses indigenous legalities, customary law, and builds community of practices across different sectors in order to really do the same thing, to manage shared responsibility for protecting the environment. And then strengthening global partnerships for outbreak surveillance, pollution. Certainly when you get to the level of bioregional cooperation and finance, you're talking about global partnerships for all of the things that we're jointly interested in. Okay, so I'm going to end just with this. This was a statement I got today from Rhett Butler's in an email. He's one of the premier voices for biodiversity conservation over the last several decades. I thought that was really cool what he said in this email. You not have to solve everything at once. You just have to begin somewhere. Keep learning. Excuse me, and allow others to carry the work further than you ever could. And that's really what our task is in all these transformational movements. And I think that there's a natural synergy, a natural partnership between Earth Law and One Health, as well as some of these other transformative sorts of movements. So just some resources. You can Google these, and I presume that you'll be given access to this presentation. I hope so. You can Google these and go to their sites. There's tremendous resources out there at all of these. Eco Jurisprudence Monitor. I got an email from them this morning. They send you the updates on all the law that's going, all the changes and things going on in Earth Law. And today, there was a post on the fact that the Seine, the river that flows through Paris, is being proposed to have rights of nature as a river, and they propose to do the governance by establishing a parliament. So the Seine River will have a parliament of all the stakeholders, and they'll get to oversee the rights of the Seine River. The Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature is another huge global organization. I belong to the Africa hub of that. They organize themselves as hubs by continents, and they work on legislation and build synergy and build partnerships across different types of organizations. And then Dark Sky does a lot of things as well, and One Earth that I mentioned. These are, if you just go to their websites, and you can find a tremendous amount of material and resources and videos, some really compelling sort of stuff. Okay, well, that's all I've really got. I talked a little bit long, uh, but if there's questions and comments or anything, we can continue this discussion offline if necessary, Reg. Uh, but I appreciate your time and uh, listening to this presentation.
Well, you have certainly stimulated some questions, Richard. And so I'm just going to kind of go down through these, and maybe we can stay a little bit long, but I usually try to end this as close as possible to 7, but we'll give it a little bit more time because it's Richard and he's my friend. And I want him to have a chance to say
Have
some
friends
things.
in influential places, yeah.
So Anonymous says, in your opinion, what is the best way to convince, or at the very least, get people to listen to the idea that One Health is the way to go?
Wow. I mean, yeah, I mean that's tough, and I
Yeah, I
feel
want to
like
hear the answer to this, Richard, because
no, I
I'll
think what
implement it.
I think you do what Reg is doing. You just keep trying. You're a battering ram, and you keep trying to have these conversations. It's the same conversation here. I would like to get the rights of nature for a particular river here that's the most important left in the lower 48 states. It's hard to start these conversations. It's hard to get people to listen because it's not the way we've been enculturated. We don't think about humans as being part of nature, and that's a huge detriment. And you have to kind of start from that as a foundation that humans are part of nature, whether you're talking One Health or anything else. All I know is just to keep talking. I don't know any other solution to that.
So Christian asks, so have you learned anything that has helped you better execute things concerning these laws?
Yeah, I've learned a lot of strategies and a lot of people who have given advice on what they did. There are several rivers that have just recently gotten legislation in the U.S., and it's basically bringing together partnerships locally and having a strong indigenous component, if you do, really helps. Uh, but I think that primarily it's a matter again of just talking the ideas up. These are radical ideas. People don't think in these terms, and they would prefer really not to think in these terms. But the law is really starting to change. Let me tell you just one quick story. Animal rights is now beginning to include the rights of companion animals. If you're going through a divorce and there's a divorce decree, there have been rulings that say that companion pet, a cat or a dog or a cockatoo, whatever, has certain rights in that adjudication process, and they must be respected. That's not really Earth law. It's maybe animal rights law. But the point is, those conversations are occurring, and those are jump off points too to having these broader conversations about, well, what other rights should nature have at one level or another.
I'm going to jump down to George's question here. Where is the financing coming from?
The financing for Earth Law Center is the only one I can speak definitely to, but Grant is just an extraordinary fundraiser. And part of being on a board and part of being part of any NGO is having the right people on your board. And basically, bluntly, I'm going to tell you that means wealthy people. Wealthy people know other wealthy people, and if they buy into what you're trying to do, there's a lot of money there. I'm astounded that Earth Law Center can open an office in London. Very expensive place to do business. And you saw his staff there. He's got 10 or 15 staff members. I bet you they're not getting paid what environmental lawyers are getting paid, but you know they're getting paid a good salary. So a lot of his is fundraising. And donations from people around the world. I've donated some. I don't have that much to donate, so it doesn't do much good. But I think a lot of that model of a typical NGO is where these organizations are getting their money. With regard to bioregionalism, that money is going to come from international organizations, including the UN and other multilateral organizations that buy into the concept that we really are at a point where this is a last resort. We really cannot protect the planet from what's going on without things like ecocide law. It's just not possible. I know that several organizations here that are working in these areas, again, they have wealthy people on their boards, and those people have been pivotal in raising the money necessary to have these conversations and to create this awareness.
I think this is a great question from McKenna. From an anthropological standpoint, why do you believe women, especially young women, are at the forefront of bringing ecological change?
Two reasons. They're the most impacted, and that's in a very negative way. They bear the brunt of all of the extractive industries in these communities. They're trying to deal with the health of their children. When you're polluting an environment with mercury, if you're in a mining operation or something. So they really are the forefront of what's going on from the standpoint of they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And they're very, very adamant and very strong leaders. One of the things that we don't recognize, I think, so much in this country, my grandmother was a pioneer lady, and boy, you don't mess with a pioneer lady. You take some of the women on the front lines around the world, and they're survivors, and they're fighters, and they're going to stand up for their children. They're going to stand up for those aspects of the environment that are important to them. So I think primarily it's being led because those are the people that are most impacted. The other reason is that in these communities. There's a different cultural perception about different roles. We talk about a women's sphere and a men's sphere. Totally different spheres of activities, and there's all sorts of laws that regulate relationships between males and females just based on what you can get away with and what you can do. Women generally are given the job of caring for the environment. No matter what it is, whether it's a vegetable garden or something else. And I think that by virtue of that, men are often, especially in the developing world, men are often as migratory labor. They're not home working on these issues. There may be a few that stay. There may be local hunters or other things. But primarily it's women who have nature as part of their charge. It's part of their sphere. They get to make a lot of decisions about what goes on with regard to the environment. We come from the outside and we tend to be top down, we tend to be male oriented, and we tend to try to impose male views on a lot of these activities. And it sometimes works and it sometimes doesn't. But it's just a very different reality at the local level.
Cool. Christian had another question. How do we get nature into the government's attention more quickly?
Wow. Well, I think, sadly, I think that some of the environmental catastrophes we're having are getting some people's attention. It's very slow and it's not the type of attention we really need. But I think that again, having these conversations about Earth law and other things, One Health, can eventually start getting some attention of different stakeholders. One of the things that we talk about in Earth law is that the next 5 years, all we're trying to do is create more and more precedents, more and more resolutions, more and more traction on awareness. The next 10 to 15 years after that, we've got a new strata of leaders. These are young people. They're people that understand ecology. They understand some of the problems that are going on, and we'll get that filtering in of new young blood that has a totally different perception. And then 20 to 25 years down the road is where we're really looking for a societal change in consciousness, which ironic just means shifting back to the way we've always been on this planet. We know we're part of nature. We know we depend on nature to survive. But we've selectively forgotten that over the past 500 years, and especially the last 200 years. So I think that sadly, some of these catastrophes will continue to get attention. I think they'll have to, because some of these problems cannot be solved until we have the recognition that much of this is environmental. Much of the environmental problems are related to the disrespect, in essence, that we've shown to nature.
Richard, I want to jump into something here, kind of to wrap things up a little bit. I don't know if you're familiar with the Green Amendment of the Pennsylvania Constitution.
I'm not.
So there was a Green Amendment that was voted in by the public back in the 70s, and it was by over 90% approved this as a constitutional amendment in Pennsylvania,
Wow.
which essentially says that we and all future generations have the right to a clean and healthy
Wow.
environment, and that all resources in the Commonwealth must be managed with that in mind, that they've got to be here for future generations as well as this generation.
That's incredible. I didn't know anything about that.
But for decades, lots of decades, the courts have been interpreting that amendment in their own ways.
Of course.
And so many activities continued on. Uh, in not too long ago, within the last 10 years, this went to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't interpret what this means. It means what it says.
Hmm.
However, I think I can attest to this for the most of the Commonwealth. Not much has changed in the way of how business is done, but there certainly is an upflow of people going, wait a minute, we have an amendment that says we have a right to this. It's not exactly saying nature rights, but it's at least recognizing the connectivity and the importance of
Yeah,
the
it's
environment.
very close to rights of nature. That's phenomenal. I'm going to have to look into that. Yeah, the frustrating thing to all of us is really making progress on some of these issues, and it doesn't really matter sometimes what is written down. It really takes a sea change in human consciousness, and how we conceive our place in the world to make some of this come into reality. If you look at the American public, survey after survey will show you that 60 to 70% are either concerned or extremely concerned about climate change. That's done through Yale. Yale surveys all 3,000 counties in the United States. I guarantee you, if you look up your county in the Yale database, you'll have 60 to 70% say they are either concerned or very concerned about climate change and other issues. And yet translating that into action is very, very difficult. And it takes a lot of dedication by people who put One Earth, One Health into a curriculum and has webinars. It takes everybody at all the different levels that we work at make a concerted effort to say it's okay to talk about this. There's people are concerned, and people are concerned about different aspects, different environmental aspects. In the United States, in my lifetime, there will not be tremendous progress on Earth law. It's just our system is too hard to change. We have to amend the Constitution in the United States. You have to get 3/4 of the states to pass it within 7 years. We could even get the Equal Rights Amendment for women
Yeah.
passed. It's not going to happen in my lifetime. But what is going to happen is there's going to be tremendous traction on the global level. People around the world, even in rural indigenous people in Africa that are illiterate, are very concerned about what's going on because they're feeling the brunt of it. That's going to change international law, and sooner or later, U.S. corporations and other organizations were going to have to deal with international law because international law is not going to stay static and say you can keep doing what you're doing. You know, under our current law, it is totally legal to destroy the environment in just about any country. There's nothing that can stop you. There is property law. If you damage somebody's property, you can be sued. There's human rights law. If you damage someone's well-being, you can be sued or punished or fined. But that's after the fact. You can go ahead and destroy anything that you want environmentally because the global system is set up with corporations and humans who are persons and have those rights. And of course, nature doesn't have any rights under that system. So I think a lot of it is just continue to talk. And I don't know. I'm very encouraged about the young generation. I'm including the young librarians that are living out in rural areas. They are conversant with these issues. They're talking about them. I really believe that there's a sea change coming. But the rest of us are going to have to be patient and not focus on the sixth mass extinction. We need to be talking about our possibilities and what little things each of us can do. Yeah.
And just to kind of wrap this up, I would like to say thank you so much, Richard. I think that your life is a good demonstration of that you have lived multiple lives in your career. You are continuing to learn past your retirement and becoming very active in a variety of different things. I hope that all of you who are listening to this presentation are as moved by it as I am, and that you can take something from this, that, you know, continuing to learn throughout your life and listening to others and doing what actions you can do, uh, those mount up. And that much of what we've been talking about this evening, you know, if you're starting this at a community level, and more communities are doing this, this is going to move on to the state level. And the more states that do this, ultimately it's going to come to the federal level. And certainly we're seeing it at the UN. We're seeing a lot of global concern here. Hopefully that translates here in America sooner than later. But I truly believe that all of you I see in my classes, and many of you who I never see in my classes, but may be on tonight, don't feel lost. Feel
Yeah.
like you're a part of it, and keep moving forward.
Oh yeah, I'm excited with young people today. I am stunned. It's going to change. There's too much knowledge out there. There's too much commitment. There's too much passion. This is really going to change, and it's going to be exciting because you're going to be part of it. You guys are going to make it happen. We're getting ready to move off the stage, or at least I am. Reg may be on the stage a few years longer, but I'll be exiting really soon.
No, I don't think so. I'll
Uh,
be in the wings.
yes. Well, thank you, Reg. It's so important to me to be able to work with you again on this at this time of our lives, and I appreciate everything that you've done to shape the trajectory of my life, and to have these conversations over the years that align our thinking on so many topics. I appreciate it.
Well, I got to say, ditto, Richard. You know, this has gone both ways for us, and it has been a great relationship. And I'm looking forward to. We're going to figure out a project to do in Alabama here sometime
Oh
soon.
man, there's so much to do here. Mammals
All
are
right,
unstudied here, you know?
all
Well,
right,
small
baby, I'm
mammals.
on my
Small
way.
mammals. Yeah. Oh, there's a lot to do. We'll do it.
All, all right, everybody. Thank you so
Thank you all
much
for
for
coming.
joining us this evening. I hope everybody has a great evening. And yes, this presentation will be up at delval.edu/One Health, one word, probably by tomorrow afternoon. Take care, everybody. Have a great evening. Bye bye.